Ryland's ship glided silently over the emerald forests of Zephyria, the atmosphere shimmering with the soft glow of bioluminescent plants. He had traveled across galaxies to reach this world, a planet that many claimed was a paradise, yet few humans had ever truly explored. As the chief human envoy, his mission was delicate: to study, understand, and forge a bond with Zephyria's inhabitants, the Zephyrians, and most importantly with their young princess, Lyra. The landing pad was surrounded by towers of crystal that reflected sunlight like liquid diamonds. Ryland stepped onto the polished surface, adjusting his suit to the new planet's gravity, slightly lighter than Earth's. He marveled at the cityscape, a blend of natural growth and alien architecture, twisting vines encased in translucent panels, gardens floating in midair. The Zephyrians were known for their artistry, and the city itself was a testament to their intelligence and aesthetic sense. Ryland was met by a delegation of officials, tall and slender, their skin glowing faintly in colors that shifted with mood and emotion. They communicated not only with speech but subtle shifts in tone and color, a complex language humans were only beginning to study. One of them, a high-ranking advisor named Saris, approached with a graceful nod. "Welcome, human envoy," Saris said. His voice carried a musical lilt. "Princess Lyra awaits you in the royal gardens. She has been expecting your arrival." Ryland bowed slightly. "Thank you." "I am honored." The royal gardens were beyond imagination. Towers of flowers hovered in the air, suspended by what Ryland could only guess was some advanced anti-gravity technology. Streams of water ran uphill before curving gently back to the ground. Birds or creatures resembling them flitted among the trees, their plumage radiant, reflecting hues that seemed almost impossible to describe. And there, at the center of the gardens, stood Lyra. She was taller than he expected, with a figure that moved with the elegance of a dancer. Her hair was long and flowed like liquid silver, catching the light in ways that seemed almost magical. Her eyes were large, deep, and curious, the color shifting subtly between shades of sapphire and emerald. Ryland had studied the images sent back from Zephyria before his departure, but seeing her in person was entirely different. There was a presence about her, a quiet authority that didn't need words. Ryland took a deep breath, reminding himself that his role was not to gawk but to observe and learn. Yet despite his best efforts, he couldn't help but notice how her soft movements, the way she tilted her head as she studied the floating gardens, conveyed a kind of natural grace that left him momentarily speechless. "Commander Ryland," Lyra greeted, her voice calm but with an undertone that hinted at amusement. "Welcome to Zephyria. I trust your journey was comfortable." "Thank you, Princess Lyra," Ryland replied, bowing his head respectfully. "It was smooth. Your planet is breathtaking." Lyra's eyes flickered briefly, the colors of her skin changing slightly, a subtle sign Ryland had learned to recognize as a mix of curiosity and surprise. "You will see more, Commander. The gardens only hint at what Zephyria truly is." They began walking along a floating bridge over a small river of glowing water. Ryland couldn't resist complimenting her, not just her status, but her presence. "Princess Lyra, if I may be honest, your elegance, it is unlike anything I have ever witnessed. Not just your appearance, but the way you move, your grace. It is remarkable." Lyra froze for a fraction of a second, a reaction so subtle that Ryland almost missed it. Her usual calm composure shifted. The colors of her skin shifted to a soft, warm hue, an emotion humans would call embarrassment or shyness. She looked away, her hand brushing lightly against a floating flower as if to anchor herself. "Thank you, Commander," she said quietly, almost softly. "That is an unexpected thing to say." Ryland realized immediately that he had touched something unspoken, something personal. Most compliments he had given in his life were polite or formal, but this was different. Lyra had not been expecting him to notice her in such a candid, human way. She had been prepared for diplomacy, for careful words, but not for sincerity from a human who saw beyond the ceremonial expectations. As they walked, Ryland observed her more closely. The slight tilt of her head, the way her lips pressed together momentarily, and then relaxed, all subtle human gestures she was mirroring, unintentionally bridging the gap between alien and human behavior. It was fascinating, a reminder that despite vast biological differences, certain expressions of emotion were universal. Their conversation turned to the gardens. Lyra explained the floating plants. how they were nurtured with a combination of advanced technology and traditional care, emphasizing the importance of harmony between nature and innovation. Rylan listened, intrigued not only by the science but by the way she spoke, her words carefully chosen yet delivered with a softness that made each concept seem alive. "You humans value efficiency above all else," Lyra observed, a faint smile touching her lips. "Here, beauty and function coexist. The plants are beautiful because they serve life, not the other way around." Rylan nodded, impressed. "It is rare to see technology and nature in such balance. On many planets, one dominates the other. Zephyria seems to have found a way to let both thrive." Lyra's skin color shifted again, a soft pastel glow, indicating she was pleased with his observation. She glanced at him, her eyes lingering just a moment longer than necessary. It was fleeting, yet enough to send a small thrill through Rylan. He realized that the earlier compliment had broken a subtle barrier. She was not simply a princess to observe. She was a person who could be understood, even appreciated on a human level. They reached a pavilion where Zephyrian scholars often met to discuss science and philosophy. Lyra gestured for Rylan to sit. She took a seat opposite him, the light catching her features, highlighting the delicate structure of her face, her expressive eyes, the soft movement of her hair. "You are direct, Commander," Lyra said, tilting her head slightly, a hint of playfulness now in her expression. "Humans rarely speak so openly about their impressions. It is refreshing." Rylan smiled, a little embarrassed but also pleased. "I believe in honesty, Princess. It is the only way to truly understand one another, especially across worlds." Lyra considered this, her gaze thoughtful. Then she said something unexpected. "Most of my people do not appreciate compliments about appearance. They find it trivial, a distraction from purpose. Yet your words were not empty. They carried thought and perhaps even courage." Rylan blinked, surprised by her choice of words. Courage. He had only been sincere. But to Lyra, honesty itself was an act of bravery, a reminder that humans could offer something different from the usual formalities she faced daily. For a long moment, they sat in quiet observation, listening to the soft hum of the pavilion's energy fields, watching the floating plants drift gently in the air. Rylan felt a connection forming, subtle but undeniable, a bridge between two worlds built not on political duty or protocol, but on recognition and understanding. Finally, Lyra spoke again, her voice softer this time. "Commander Rylan, your reaction, your words, they surprised me. I was not prepared for them, yet I find myself curious. Curiosity is dangerous, you know. It can lead to knowledge or to mistakes." "I welcome curiosity, Princess," Rylan said sincerely. "Mistakes are part of learning and knowledge is worth the risk." Her lips curved slightly, the closest thing to a human smile he had seen on her so far. "Perhaps you are braver than most humans I have met. We shall see." They rose and continued walking through the gardens. Rylan noted that the earlier tension in her posture had eased. Her reaction to his compliment had been genuine, a human-like vulnerability that made her seem less untouchable, more real. He felt honored that she allowed him to see that side of her. As they approached a bridge overlooking a cascade of glowing water, Lyra stopped and looked down at the currents below. The twin moons of Zephyria reflected on the water's surface, casting a shimmering pattern around her. Rylan took the opportunity to speak again, carefully. "Princess, your people have built something extraordinary here. Not just the gardens, but your city, your culture, and you yourself. You carry all of it with a quiet strength. It is inspiring." Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time, Rylan saw her entirely unguarded. Her skin glowed faintly, a warm amber tone, as if acknowledging the compliment in a way that words could not fully express. "Commander Rylan," she said softly, almost a whisper, "you have a way of seeing beyond the surface. That is rare." He smiled, sensing that the day had marked the beginning of a journey neither of them could have anticipated. What started as a simple mission to observe had become something more, a meeting of minds, a crossing of hearts, a subtle but undeniable connection. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the gardens, Rylan realized that his admiration for the princess had shifted. It was no longer only about her outward beauty. It was about the depth behind her gaze, the grace in her movements, and the complexity of her thoughts. And he knew that the reaction he had witnessed, the surprise, the subtle blush, the quiet acknowledgement, was the start of a story neither human nor Zephyrian had expected to unfold. With a final look at the floating gardens, Ryland silently vowed to understand Lyra, not just as a princess or a subject of diplomacy, but as a person. And in that moment, he saw the beginning of trust forming between two very different worlds, a fragile but promising connection built on honesty, courage, and recognition. The first day on Zephyria ended not with ceremonies or speeches, but with a simple truth. Sincerity mattered more than protocol, and human eyes could see things that even the most advanced Zephyrian scholars might overlook. And in that sincerity, the alien princess had revealed a part of herself that few would ever see, leaving Ryland both awed and profoundly aware of the journey that lay ahead. The morning sun rose over Zephyria, casting golden streaks across the floating gardens. Commander Ryland awoke in his quarters aboard the observation station overlooking the city, his thoughts still lingering on the previous day. He replayed every moment in his mind, every subtle glance from Princess Lyra, every shift of color in her skin that reflected emotion. It was rare for him to feel so unsettled by a meeting, yet this encounter was unlike any diplomatic mission he had experienced. He dressed quickly, adjusting his suit for exploration. Today, he had been assigned to accompany Lyra on a journey beyond the palace grounds. The royal entourage had arranged a cultural exchange to show him the Zephyrian approach to technology, agriculture, and daily life. Rylan was eager to see more of the planet, but he was equally eager to observe the princess again, curious about her reaction when interacting with him outside formal settings. The palace gates opened to reveal a vibrant scene. Zephyrian citizens moved gracefully along walkways lined with glowing flora. Hovercraft glided silently above the city, their designs elegant yet functional. Children with delicate, translucent wings played near fountains that floated midair, giggling in sounds that were melodic and almost musical to Ryland's ears. He took it all in, knowing that his eyes were absorbing a culture far richer than anything Earth could offer. Lyra approached him at the gates, her silver hair reflecting the morning light. Today, her attire was practical yet regal, a tunic of soft, iridescent material that shifted colors slightly with movement. She smiled at him, a quiet, almost imperceptible gesture, but it was enough to stir Ryland's attention immediately. "Commander Ryland," she greeted, her voice calm but carrying that same hint of playfulness he remembered from yesterday. "Are you ready for today's journey?" "I am, Princess," he replied. "I am curious to see your world beyond the palace, and I am sure I will learn much from you as well." Lyra's eyes flickered with that warm, soft glow he had begun to recognize as a sign of approval. "Curiosity is a good trait, Commander. But on Zephyria, it must be guided carefully. One must observe before acting. You may find that is true even in interactions with people." Ryland nodded, noting her subtle reminder. He had learned quickly that compliments and admiration were delicate matters on this planet. Yesterday's words had left a lasting impression on her, but he could see that Zephyrians valued observation and thoughtfulness above all. They walked along a path lined with floating lights that illuminated intricate carvings on trees. Lyra explained the function of each plant, its uses in medicine, energy production, and even art. Ryland listened intently, noting the combination of advanced technology and natural harmony. Unlike human innovation, which often prioritized efficiency, Zephyria's advancements were designed to preserve balance with the environment. At one point, Lyra stopped by a particularly striking plant. Its petals were translucent, glowing faintly from within. "This is called the Solara bloom," she said. "It opens only at dawn. Humans often see only beauty, but each bloom has a purpose. Its pollen generates energy that powers a nearby village. Beauty and function coexist here in ways humans rarely understand." Ryland bent closer, inspecting the bloom. "It's remarkable," he said. "On Earth, we often see beauty as decoration. Here, it serves life itself. There is wisdom in that." Lyra's lips curved slightly, the closest thing to a smile he had seen her give openly. "You are observing carefully, Commander. That is a rare quality among humans." As they continued, Lyra led him through a series of floating gardens connected by narrow, twisting bridges. Rylan admired the skill required to maintain balance and movement without disturbing the environment. He asked questions about the energy systems, the soil, the air, and the plants' symbiotic relationships. Lyra answered thoughtfully, explaining that knowledge and understanding were more important than blind observation. Their path eventually led to a small forest on the edge of the city. Here, the trees were taller, their trunks glowing faintly with bioluminescence. Strange creatures flitted among the branches, winged animals with scales that refracted light in delicate patterns. Lyra moved carefully, pointing out features humans might overlook. "These creatures are cautious," she explained. "They have learned to coexist with humans and Zephyrians alike. Their instincts are guided by observation and respect for life. Humans tend to rush to act before understanding. I hope you will take your time." Rylan smiled, appreciating her guidance. "I will do my best, Princess. I hope to understand, not just observe." As they ventured deeper, Lyra paused by a small clearing. The sunlight filtered through floating leaves, casting dancing shadows across the ground. Rylan noticed her eyes linger on him for a brief moment before she looked away, the familiar warmth of her glow hinting at her thoughts. "You humans are curious in unusual ways," she said softly, almost as if to herself. Then turning to him, she added, "Yesterday, your words, they were unexpected. I have not forgotten them." Rylan felt a small surge of surprise. "I did not mean to cause discomfort, Princess. I spoke with sincerity, that is all." Lyra's gaze softened, her skin shifting to a pastel shade indicating calmness. "I understand. Your sincerity is unique, and it has value. Few see beyond appearances here. Most focus on protocol and rank. You see more." The compliment caught him off guard. Humans were often judged by strength or intelligence, yet here a princess praised him for perception and sincerity. Rylan felt both humbled and encouraged. Their exploration continued through the forest, leading to a plateau overlooking a sparkling lake. The water shimmered with bioluminescent currents, reflecting the twin moons even in daylight. Lyra motioned for Rylan to sit on a smooth rock nearby. "We will rest here for a moment," she said. "The Zephyrian approach to learning is not hurried. Observation and reflection are essential." Rylan seated himself, watching her study the lake. He noticed a faint tension in her posture, a subtle awareness of being observed. He decided to break the silence. "Princess Lyra," he said carefully, "I wanted to ask your reaction yesterday. When I spoke honestly about your elegance, your grace, you seemed surprised. I hope I did not offend you." Lyra turned to him, her eyes calm yet thoughtful. "I was surprised, Commander. Not by the words themselves, but by their honesty. Humans rarely speak so openly without hidden motives. Here, compliments often serve purposes, political, social, or ceremonial. You spoke from a place of authenticity. That is rare, and it was unexpected." Rylan nodded, understanding. "I see. On Earth, honesty is valued, but it is not always well received. It seems that on Zephyria, honesty carries a different weight." "Yes," Lyra agreed. "And your honesty, it has caused reflection. I have thought about it since yesterday. It has reminded me that not all humans are as they appear, and perhaps not all Zephyrians are as careful as they should be in observing others." The subtle acknowledgement left Rylan feeling a quiet satisfaction. Their connection was growing, not through words alone, but through mutual understanding, respect, and trust. As they continued to talk, Lyra shared stories of her childhood, of the forests and lakes she had explored, the mentors who had guided her, and the responsibilities she bore as a princess. Rylan listened with rapt attention, marveling at the complexity of her world and the maturity she exhibited despite her youth. Suddenly, a soft rustling came from the nearby trees. Lyra instinctively stepped in front of him, her posture alert yet controlled. A small creature emerged, its body covered in iridescent scales, wings delicate and transparent. It paused, studying them both before darting away. Lyra relaxed, a subtle laugh escaping her lips. "You see, Commander," she said, "even here one must remain aware. Life on Zephyria is beautiful, but it is not without its surprises. One must respect every living being, large or small." Rylan smiled. "I will keep that in mind. Your world is full of lessons." As the sun reached its zenith, they returned to the city, carrying with them samples of plants and crystals for study. Rylan realized that each interaction with Lyra revealed layers of personality he had not anticipated. She was playful, thoughtful, curious, and cautious. Her reactions, sometimes subtle, sometimes striking, kept him engaged and alert. By the end of the day, Rylan felt a growing sense of admiration, not just for her beauty, but for her intelligence, her principles, and the depth of her emotions. Lyra, in turn, seemed increasingly intrigued by his perspective, the way he viewed the world and his careful sincerity. As they reached the palace gates, Lyra turned to him. "Commander Rylan today has been productive. You have observed well, and I trust you will continue to do so. There is much yet to learn and much yet to understand about Zephyria and perhaps even about me." Rylan bowed slightly. "Thank you, Princess. I look forward to every lesson." She allowed a moment of silence, her eyes studying him as though measuring the weight of his words. Then, almost imperceptibly, she smiled. "Good. Curiosity and courage are qualities I respect. Let us see where they lead." As he left her side, Rylan realized that this day had deepened their connection. Yesterday's compliment had sparked a reaction, but today had begun the process of mutual understanding and trust. He sensed that their journey was far from over, that both human and princess had much to learn from each other, and that surprises, both small and profound, awaited in the days to come. The evening settled over Zephyria, painting the skies in hues of violet and gold. Rylan looked back at the palace, the gardens, and the floating bridges, feeling a quiet excitement. He knew that what had begun as a diplomatic mission was transforming into something far richer, a bridge between two worlds, built on honesty, respect, and the subtle but undeniable power of human perception. And somewhere within the palace, Lyra's thoughts lingered on the human who had seen her in a way few ever had, honestly, sincerely, without expectation. She wondered what tomorrow would bring, and whether the surprising reactions of the human commander might reveal even more than she had anticipated. The days on Zephyria had begun to blend into a rhythm of exploration, learning, and subtle surprises. Commander Rylan had grown accustomed to the planet's gentle, flowing energy, the soft hum of floating gardens, and the warmth of Princess Lyra's presence. Yet no matter how much he learned about the world, he found that the princess herself remained a mystery, a complex blend of grace, curiosity, and quiet strength. That morning, the palace announced a formal meeting in the council chamber. Rival factions within the Zephyrian court had grown restless, skeptical of human influence and the presence of an outsider in Lyra's life. Rumors of dissent were spreading, and Lyra had requested Rylan's presence. She wanted his perspective, not just as a human, but as someone who had learned to observe and understand Zephyrian culture. Rylan arrived at the chamber, noting the tall, translucent walls that reflected the soft light of the morning. The council members, all senior Zephyrians, were seated in a semicircle. Their expressions were calm, yet their skin colors shifted slightly, signaling curiosity, concern, and perhaps subtle disapproval. Lyra stood at the center, poised and commanding, a quiet confidence radiating from her. "Commander Rylan," she said, her tone firm yet welcoming, "I trust you are prepared to offer your insight today." "I will do my best, Princess," he replied, adjusting his stance. "I observe carefully, and I hope my perspective may assist in finding balance." The council began with a discussion of trade and security policies. Some members voiced concern that humans could disrupt Zephyrian traditions, while others feared that relying too heavily on outsiders might weaken the planet's autonomy. Rylan listened, noting not only the content of their words but the subtle cues, the shifts in skin tone, the rhythm of their speech, the interplay of emotion and logic that guided every decision. Lyra addressed the council with calm authority. "We are at a crossroads," she said. "We must choose a path that preserves our traditions while allowing for growth. Commander Rylan has spent time observing our world. His perspective is valuable because he sees what we often overlook, connections, motivations, and consequences that are hidden beneath surface appearances." The chamber murmured. Some council members leaned forward, skeptical, while others exchanged glances, clearly intrigued. Rylan spoke carefully, emphasizing respect for Zephyrian culture while pointing out practical observations. He highlighted ways humans and Zephyrians could cooperate without compromising values, drawing from his time exploring the floating forests, the gardens, and observing the behavior of creatures alongside Lyra. One council member, a tall Zephyrian with violet-toned skin, spoke with measured authority. "And what do you propose, human? How do you suggest we bridge worlds without risking our integrity?" Rylan paused, considering his words. "By observing carefully, respecting differences, and acting with honesty. Humans may be direct, but we also learn quickly from mistakes. If both sides are willing to communicate openly, we can find solutions that preserve tradition while embracing growth. Cooperation is not compromise, It is understanding. Lyra's eyes softened as she listened. She had expected diplomacy, but Ryland's words carried a quiet clarity and courage that few humans displayed. He spoke without arrogance, without hidden agendas, and she recognized the value of that honesty. After hours of discussion, the council reached a tentative agreement on policies that balanced tradition with cautious collaboration. Lyra's leadership was strengthened, and Ryland's observations were acknowledged as insightful contributions rather than mere human suggestions. The room, once tense, now held a sense of cautious optimism. Later, as the sun began to set, Lyra invited Ryland to walk with her in the royal gardens. They moved silently, side by side, watching the glowing streams and floating flora. The day's events had been exhausting, yet the quiet of the gardens brought a sense of calm. "You handled the council well," Lyra said softly, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "Your words carried weight, and your understanding of Zephyrian culture, it surprised many, including me." Ryland glanced at her. "I could not have done it without observing, Princess. And without your guidance. You have shown me much about your people, your values, and your world. I am only trying to reflect that understanding back." Lyra's skin shifted to a warm amber, a sign of approval and subtle amusement. "You reflect more than you realize. Humans often focus on appearance, on superficial traits. Yet you see beyond that. You notice sincerity, courage, thoughtfulness. You have noticed me as a person, not just a princess. That is rare." Ryland felt a small surge of humility and pride. Her words were more than acknowledgement. They were recognition of a human perspective that she had not expected. He realized that their connection was growing, not through formality, but through shared observation and mutual respect. As they approached a small pavilion at the edge of the gardens, Lyra paused. The twin moons were beginning to rise, casting soft reflections on the waters below. She looked at him, her expression contemplative. "There is something I wish to show you," she said, motioning for him to follow. They stepped onto a narrow bridge that extended over the water. Beneath them, the currents shimmered with bioluminescent light, moving in patterns that seemed almost alive. Lyra reached into a small pouch and pulled out a crystal, shaped like a miniature star. Its facets reflected the moons and the glow of the water, casting a delicate rainbow across her face. She handed it to Ryland. "This is a Zephyrian symbol of trust," she explained. "It is given to those who are seen and understood, not just for what they can do, but for who they are. I am giving it to you because you have shown that ability." Ryland accepted it carefully, feeling the weight of its significance. "Princess, I am honored. I will cherish this." Lyra's eyes flickered with warmth. "It is not just a token, Commander. It is recognition of what I have seen in you. Your courage, your observation, your honesty. That is what matters most here. That is why your words yesterday mattered. And why your presence today has made a difference." Ryland was struck by the depth of her sentiment. He had expected diplomacy, perhaps gratitude, but not this personal acknowledgement. The princess, so composed and regal, had chosen to reveal a part of herself that few would see. He felt a mix of awe and responsibility, realizing that this trust was not to be taken lightly. They stood together on the bridge, the waters below glowing softly, the twin moons reflecting in Lyra's eyes. For a moment, silence stretched between them, not awkward but comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. "You have changed the way I view humans," Lyra said finally, her voice quiet. "I assumed you would be brash, impulsive, focused only on immediate goals. Instead, you are careful, observant, and courageous in subtle ways. That is far more impressive than displays of strength or authority." Ryland felt a warmth spread through him. "Thank you, Princess. I have learned much from you as well. You have shown me patience, insight, and a perspective I could never have anticipated. I only hope to live up to your trust." Lyra allowed a small laugh, the sound soft and musical. "Perhaps you already have. Let us see what the coming days reveal. There are more lessons to learn and more surprises await." As the evening deepened, they returned to the palace. Ryland carried the crystal with him, a reminder of the connection forming between them. That night, as he wrote notes in his journal, he reflected on the subtle shifts in Lyra's reactions. Her initial surprise, the warmth that followed, and the trust she had placed in him. It was more than admiration for beauty. It was recognition of character, thoughtfulness, and sincerity. The following day, Lyra proposed a new expedition to study the Zephyrian wildlife further from the city. Ryland agreed eagerly. knowing that these shared experiences would continue to build understanding and respect. As they moved through the forests, he noticed that her reactions were increasingly playful, subtle gestures, brief glances, and shifts in skin color that indicated mood and interest. Each reaction surprised him, revealing a depth of personality beyond the formal and regal. At one point, they encountered a rare species of Zephyrian herbivore, its fur iridescent and its movements cautious. Lyra crouched, observing quietly, and signaled Rylan to do the same. The creature approached, sniffed cautiously, then retreated. Lyra's eyes lit with delight. "Observation, patience, and calm," she said. "Those are the keys to understanding life on Zephyria. You have learned well, Commander. You are more than a visitor, you are a participant." Rylan smiled. "I only hope to continue learning. Your guidance has made all the difference." As the sun set over the forest, casting long shadows across the luminous plants, Rylan realized that his journey with Lyra was no longer just about diplomacy. It was about mutual respect, shared experiences, and the unexpected surprises that came from seeing one another honestly and sincerely. The day ended with a quiet moment at a cliff overlooking a glowing valley. Lyra handed him a small vial containing bioluminescent pollen from a rare flower. "Take this," she said. "It is a reminder that the smallest things often carry the greatest significance. Observation and care reveal their value." Rylan accepted it, feeling the symbolic weight of her gesture. It was clear that their journey was far from over and that the surprises, both in Zephyria and in their connection, were only beginning. As night fell, Rylan reflected on the lessons of the day. Courage could be quiet, understanding required patience, and admiration could be expressed in ways that transcended words. And through it all, Lyra's reactions, her surprise, her trust, her subtle warmth, had become the most compelling discovery of all. He knew that the path ahead would hold challenges, perhaps even danger, but he felt confident that together they could navigate them. What had begun as a compliment to beauty had grown into something far deeper, a bridge between worlds built on honesty, respect, and the subtle power of human perception. And somewhere within the palace, Lyra's thoughts mirrored his. She had not expected to encounter a human who saw her truly, who appreciated her presence beyond her royal duties or appearance. The connection they were forming was unprecedented, and it carried a quiet thrill, a promise of discovery, and the reassurance that understanding could transcend the boundaries of species and worlds.